flaming pan of oil is
exciting.
A lot less fun than it sounds. What do you got here, Roy?
We're going to start the build on the axles that we're going to be putting in this Comanche project. And as we said in the opening video, this is a Dana 60. This one's out of a 2002 Ford F350. It's a standard 1-ton pickup, non-dually. Yeah, it's a just your basic ordinary Dana 60. You can see there's all this handling leaf springs, I believe. But yeah, just ordinary. It's got leaf spring pads. What we're going to have to end up doing is we're going to have to cut some of this housing off, and so we're going to have the grinder in here and cut it back so that we can get the truss kit to go on. And the biggest reason, I mean, I don't necessarily need to do the truss for strength. It's more that the truss provides mounting points for the forelink, because I'm going to be using a long arm kit for a Jeep Cherokee XJ, and the truss kit I bought has all of the pieces that line up all the brackets exactly where you want. The added strength is a bonus. I mean, we have washed this off, although it's been sitting a while, so it's dusty again, but we got all the grease off of it. We're going to tear it all the way down to base nothing, and weld the truss kit on and put in the axle and the locker and the gears, and then we'll finish building up, and then we can use it to test a few things out. Just be ready ahead of time.
And then this other axle we've got here for the rear.
Yeah, and yeah, we already talked about this one too. This is the Dana 80. Does this axle make my rear end look big? Yeah, it's big, it's beefy. You can see it's got all the gusseting and everything in to handle all of the weight. This is kind of a simpler axle in terms of brackets and so forth, but there are a few things on here that we're going to have to do. I've got a truss kit for this. The only reason to truss this one is that I'm going to need a mounting point up here, and this will be similar to Penny. We're going to have a triangulated forelink, and I'll have two arms coming in, and I need something a little better than this as a mounting surface for the upper link ends.
At this point, just a lot of tear down, disassembly, and then cutting off brackets.
Yes.
So we have confirmed that we can remove the unit bearing and shaft together as a unit. You just got to be able to, you know, break the seal on the seal.
And if you get a pry bar and you get it here, and you can pry against the housing, and that gives you the leverage to push the seal out.
So next step is to dismount the knuckles.
Pops free. Relatively easy. So when we install the truss, portion of this housing has to come off. And we cut it all the way back to the inner tube. When I did this on a Dana 44, I cut enough into it that this hole for the case spreader was actually compromised. I'm wondering if we should do the gear setup before we do the truss. We don't have to do final installation, but that would give us, once the truss is in, then we just bolt it in.
If we're in a situation where we need to use the spreader in order to get the...
Well, because we usually do.
Yeah, the in and out, in and out, in and out. Ready? That's turning.
It is.
Okay. So part of what's going on here, the flange.
Cam with flange is in the groove with the tube.
The flange of the cam fits in the groove with the tube.
Yeah, something like that. It's resting on the flange of the housing rather than on the flange of the pocket there for the spreader. So that gives us the most grip.
We got the axle completely 100% disassembled, kind of cleaned up a little bit, and it's time to get rid of all these brackets. All this came with the stock suspension, and we're doing a truss that all needs to sit in this location, so all this has to go.
Nope. Still attached. Yep.
That's good. So we're going to use this wire wheel to grind some paint off. I suspect that's what's causing some of the issues with the plasma cutter not getting a good arc and sustaining it. So I'm just going to grind a little bit. Maybe. There we go. I'm in shadow, so I can't quite see. Can you hand me a light?
Sure.
Gloves are great for dexterity. So, yeah, it's getting there. Stop. Hammer time. Hammer time. Give it a whack.
Why did Han Solo not like his dinner?
Why did Han Solo not like his dinner? I don't know.
It was a little chewy.
It was a little chewy.
So we're now in a conversation about how to go after the next piece. I have had a lot of problems with the plasma when I try to get right close to cutting around the tube, where I end up gouging the tube with the plasma.
Yeah.
Which then takes a lot of work to fill it back up.
You gotta weld in a bead and grind it down.
Grind it down and weld it in and grind it down. And
So we're probably gonna use a cutoff wheel to get these pieces that are still sticking up.
you left a nice big tab, so if you just kind of erode the weld with the cutoff wheel, you can probably get in there with a hammer.
Yeah. Well, and I'm looking at this, and it wasn't fully welded all the way around, so that might help. So we got the big chunks off, and now it's time for the more precision work. So we've got most of the bracket cut off. Got it down to where a grinder can take the rest of it off. I didn't want to cut too close to the axle, and actually flip it over, because actually can end up digging into the axle tube if you do it wrong, and I try to avoid that as much as I can. But yeah, so I got where I could get with the plasma cutter. It left some big pieces, and came in with the cutoff wheel, got the major chunks out, and now we're gonna take it down with the grinder.
that should be mostly it. In the grand scheme of things, not a lot of gouges or nicks that have to be cleaned up either. So, nicely done.